Pathological Demand Avoidance, in brackets PDA, further research is required to evaluate its potential risks by Richard Woods, a London South Bank University PhD student. So I do have a few conflicts of interest. So I've been developing various PDA tools such as the Pathological Demand Avoidance Belief Scale. I do earn some income from delivering training on PDA, and I reluctantly advocate for it to be attributed as a standalone construct, so that's something separate from autism. So, yeah, a bit about my perspective. I was diagnosed with autism in 2012. I now try to use a post-autistic identity. I meet Elizabeth Neese's PDA profile, but I'm not emotionally attached to it. I'm no longer basing my identity on these diagnostic categories as much as I reasonably can do. I favour a transdiagnostic approach, and I think we should stop using kind of psychiatric disorders based constructs in the future when we can. I'm based as part of the Critical Autism / Disability Studies group at London South Bank University, and I'm currently on a gap year for my PhD. So, a bit about my kind of my knowledge and expertise level. So, I've been a project lead for the Frontiers in Education PDA special issue. I do peer review PDA manuscripts, and yeah, I try to equally respect divergent views and evidence on PDA to critically synthesize appropriate interpretations on PDA. This is my interpretation of PDA literature. Some others may disagree. So, yeah, while you're here, if you could please like and subscribe, like the video, or subscribe to the channel, it would be greatly appreciated. So currently I'm doing this channel as a bit of a side project, but if you like a bit more regular output from me on the topic, I could potentially start a Patreon or have channel members where people were financially supporting me. I can put out more regular content, like 2 videos per month, have regular reaction videos to PDA scholarship, have a Discord for kind of material, and for those for material related to my research, and for like people critically engaging with PDA. This is just an option I'm putting out there. I'm perfectly okay with the current setup of what I'm doing on the channel. So yeah, a bit about the what's in this video. So contextualizing this video, contextualizing PDA debates, critique of Newson's PDA profile, what PDA could be, Newson's PDA is not autism, non-autistic PDAers, effects of PDA's confusion, and then some research topics. I need to be quite clear, the risks I put out for PDA in this video, they're predicted risks. There is some limited research to suggest some of them, but there needs to be a lot more research to be able to suitably evaluate the risks of PDA. So researchers should be, do we actually want to have PDA as a standalone kind of category? My point of view of this, for those who identify PDAs, if they are confident and they believe their own views on PDA, they should be wanting these predictions to be tested so they can be inevitably falsified from their perspectives, assuming that they are confident in it. I take a different outlook. I think that we should be testing all these predictions because people have made them. I think some of them are likely to gain evidence if they are actually tested. So this video is based off the initial manuscript I submitted responding to Gillberg et al. 2024. That was recently published in the Lancet Child and Adolescent Health Journal back in April 2024. And due to various feedback from the editor, the article got revised. So I'm pretty confident this is substantially different from what has been published. The actual, I'll put links to this article down in the video description and to the accepted version, which is publicly available. And due to the kind of the original submission going into quite a lot of detail around predicted risks of PDA, I've been able to have an appendix with the published article for people to go and reference on themselves if they would like to. And just about a kind of nature of the content of the actual article and this video, Gillberg et al. Actually did respond, and this is what they said about the kind of content. They said, We also agree with Richard Woods that it remains to be seen if EDA or PDA will fit into future psychiatric diagnostic systems and whether it's desirable at all to retain as a unitary condition. So, and full references down the bottom. I will put a link into their response later. I will kind of talk about the introduction of the essay now. So, Gillberg kind of called for research into PDA causes and prevalence. I share Gillberg concerns over the kind of difficulties experienced by PDAs and their families, and I do think they need to be suitably supported. Although there are differences in views between me and Gillberg and over how they should ideally be supported. I do think that PDAs and their family members are vulnerable groups. Currently, there's insufficient evidence to indicate what PDA is, and it has many competing hypotheses. I should point out that I've basically adapted the text from the original manuscript that I submitted, so I've not had time to format it into what I typically do for videos, which is using Harvard referencing. I'm still using numeric referencing from that is required by the Lancet Child and Adolescent Health Journal for this video. So yeah, it's also worth pointing out that PDA itself, as a category, has been criticised for having a spiky profile, as in it has a sorted array of features containing broad areas of difficulty. So moving on to the next bit. So yeah, Elizabeth Newson's behaviour profile for PDA has been critiqued quite a lot in terms of it being conceptually eclectic. So it has like some observable behaviours, expressed emotions, assumptions about reasons behind these expressed behaviours, and assumed underlying causes. This is important because all native PDA behaviour profiles are derived from Newson, so a lot of these critiques are applicable to the other behaviour profiles that are being used and are in print. I would point out that if you actually look at the various behaviour profiles of PDA in print, they have a diverse wordings in them, with some traits having wordings that are autism-like and some others contradicting autism understandings. So if you actually look at the outlook of arbitrary clinical practice in the UK, that's stuff like NICE, the British Psychological Society, and the Royal College of Psychiatrists, they tend to take a neutral outlook on what PDA is, and not favouring any one outlook over the other. And there's an example of at least one high-profile study in the UK excluding cases of PDA. These are with children and persons with primary PDA attribution, so they didn't have an autism diagnosis. They excluded them from their research because they could not be confident those children were autistic. There's also kind of strong resistance against dividing autism into subtypes. This is on like robust grounds, both evidence-wise and to reduce stigma for autistic persons. So going back to one of the problems with PDA is that since Newson's original article came out, the response article by Elena Geralda has noted that PDA's risk of causing clinical and research confusion, this cause has been repeated since by Jonathan Green and colleagues, and again by Jonathan Green more recently. There is some empirical evidence suggesting that PDA is not a distinct category, and I'd also point out that, like, even if you view PDA as a profile of autism, which I don't, the PDA literature acknowledges that aspects of PDA contradict autism understandings, which I'll kind of go into here. So if you actually pay attention to Newson's work, she was quite consistent from like 1983 till 2003 that PDA is not autism, and that she still would be a mistake to view PDA as autism. And there are kind of plenty of hints and things that she's done in her work on PDA that indicates that she quite clearly is not viewing PDA as autism. So, for one, she never based PDA on a triad of impairment from the 1980s through to the early 2000s. And that's important because a triad of impairment underpinned autism diagnosis at that time period, at least from the 1990s to the 2000s. And she's seen that PDA had at least relatively intact theory of mind and empathy deficits. Newson assumed that PDA had at least relatively intact theory of mind and empathy, and she assumed that its social communication issues were due to deficits in social identity, pride, or shame. Newson also she excluded PDA cases from her database, which showed atypical autism features. So, yeah. So there are other aspects in the literature that indicates problematic viewing it as autism. Um, one of these examples is that people have argued that PDA is seen in non-autistic populations, and there is some limited research evidence to support this. So, and this kind of matters because when we look at kind of co-occurring difficulties, how they present in autistic versus non-autistic people, they tend to present differently in autistics versus non-autistic. So, for example, anxiety tends to have different causal mechanisms in autistics versus non-autistics. So, what this tells us is that PDA likely presents differently in non-autistic populations compared to how PDA presents in autistic persons. Currently, there's little research investigating PDA in non-autistic populations. So, yeah, the confusion around PDA does have consequences. So, PDA is not universally recognised across the UK. There's no standard definition on how to diagnose PDA. So frequently in the UK, private clinics will kind of do PDA attributions, but there are examples of problematic assessment and practice for PDA within the PDA literature. So, for example, one clinic misdiagnosed PDA when actually they should have been diagnosed in catatonia. What this kind of highlights is how PDA itself can medicalise as expressions that people use to assert their self-agency, especially when distressed. So what this means is that people's physical health symptoms can potentially be missed via diagnostic overshadowing due to how PDA pathologizes behaviours people tend to use to show their distress or to assert their self-agency when stressed and distressed. This means that people may not receive suitable treatment for underlying ill health, and that could lead to potentially tragic consequences such as death or severe kind of ill health or other side effects. And this kind of risk has been observed with profound autism. So yeah, there's also a point of view that the lack of recognition of PDA can lead to frustration from caregivers when PDA diagnoses are not accepted by local services. There's also kind of accounts of children being denied education placements if they have a PDA attribution. I think there are many anecdotal accounts about the not school being refused school education placements off the top of my head, but please don't quote me on that. So yeah, the final area of predicted PDA risks is the kind of indirect consequences, and I'm focusing on the PDA strategies here in this one. So some have argued that that PDA has different approaches and strategies compared to autism. And the problem with this is that the PDA strategies seem to replicate generic good practice, and this is including things like offering choices, like 2 to 3 choices at a time, negotiating with them using sensitive humour, like building trust, building rapport with them, always having plan B, like treating kind of meltdowns as panic attacks, kind of reducing demands, and there's multiple kind of implications. So the first point is one of the reasons why autism subtypes are removed from the main American Diagnostic Manual about 10 years ago was because the evidence suggests there is no differential treatment between between autistic people or different subgroups. The other implication for this is that if you prematurely realify PDA as a profile of autism, so therefore there's a subgroup of autistic people that should receive PDA strategies while others should not, it risks denying autistic people from receiving these what seem to be generic good practice strategies. And we know more generally that the autistic population is in a quite high level of distress with a lot of mental health issues, a lot of suicide attempts, and a quite high rate of suicides. And we know this because the autistic population generally seems to be quite poorly treated by broader society and culture. So we need to make sure that if you are going to have PDA profile of ASD, and he's saying have different strategies to other autistic people, but it's not going to have an adverse impact on potentially contributing to autistic suicides or even high rates of autistic suicides. So what that means is there's a few kind of potential research topics based on the various kind of topics discussed. So PDA potential risks need research to evaluate them and to indicate appropriate approach to PDA. So for example, reifying PDA as a separate, distinct category or attributing PDA features to accepted categories of difficulties such as anxiety and ADHD, or ODD is what I should say there, not ADHD twice. By ODD, I mean oppositional defiant disorder. There's also pressing needs for research to indicate how PDA may be expressed in non-autistic populations. That kind of PDA's potential adverse effects need to be investigated, so such as like what are the possible impacts of prejudice and stigma from PDA's medicalised and severe discourse. And Jonathan Green and colleagues in 2018 said that it might be worth having an independent review of current autism treatment in the UK child and adolescent mental health services. This might be helpful. And I would just point out that the various research topics outlined here are vital to enable stakeholders to adequately evaluate PDA's risks. I'm going to restate this. If you're confident and you believe in your views on PDA, you should be open for these research topics to be investigated and tested, just so that they can be presumably falsified from your perspective, if you believe the hype around PDA. The reason I'm saying this is because I'm pretty certain I'm going to get quite a lot of flack for putting this video out there, because some people don't seem to be as secure on the views on PDA as they seem to be saying. So yeah, a bit of an end game on the topic. So these are my contact details. So my email address, my Twitter handle, my ResearchGate, my YouTube channel, and which you should be watching this video on. I'm not going to take any questions. There are 5 reference slides which I'm going to linger on for a few seconds each, so you can kind of pause it if you want to. And that's pretty much about it for this video. It should be quite a short one, and quite easy for people to interact with in their own time. I quite like this topic. I think it's needed to kind of and I'm just kind of critically evaluate and to question, to probe what are we actually doing with PDA as a category in kind of research and in practice. So yeah, this is it. So I'm going to end with may your STEMI activities be many and your flow states long, which is kind of equivalent to kind of live long and prosper. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good afternoon and whatever you're doing.